Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we are talking about electric cars and electric bills. Now I've got a lot of people asking me, hey Jason, now that you have an electric car, what's your electric bill like? And it's an interesting question, a strange question, but if you absolutely must know, last month, my first full month of owning an electric car, my electric bill was $46.71. Now that tells you absolutely nothing, and what I think is interesting about this question is people don't ask me, hey Jason, now that you own an electric car, what's your gasoline bill like? Because really you're just replacing one form of energy for another, and I think something that people get confused that they don't quite understand is how much cheaper an electric car is to drive. Now I didn't say electric cars are cheap. Teslas are not cheap, electric cars are not cheap. Used, yes, you can get electric cars for a low price. Not necessarily used Teslas, but used electric cars, whether it's the Leaf, 500e, there are cheap electric cars out there. The goal of this video, however, is to talk about the energy cost. How much does it cost to move an electric car from this spot to this spot? And the reason why it's cheaper for an electric car to move from this spot to this spot is not because electricity is cheaper than gasoline. In fact, gasoline is very cheap right now in the United States. The reason why it's cheap to move an electric car from this spot to this spot is because it does it so efficiently. And that's what we're going to get into in this video and talk about the actual cost difference of driving an electric car versus driving a gasoline car. Alright, so who's stoked to do some math? So our first question is, how much does it cost for one full charge of the Tesla Model 3? So I have a Tesla Model 3 Performance, and how much does it cost to fill it up from absolute dead, zero battery to full? In other words, one full tank. So the cost per tank, or full battery size, we're looking at what is the size of the battery, and then we're going to divide that by its charging efficiency. So the Tesla Model 3 Performance has a 75 kilowatt hour battery pack. We divide that by charging efficiency. Now we're just going to use a conservative estimate of 80%. We don't actually know what it is. It's probably a good bit higher than 80%, but a nice conservative estimate so that our numbers aren't wrong. They're just erring on the side of caution and, going to be a bit conservative. So we multiply that by the cost per kilowatt hour. Now, if we go back to my electric bill, you can see that I used 467 kilowatt hours of energy, and that cost me $46.71. That makes the math very simple because 467 divided by 46.7 equals 10. So yes, there are some fixed costs and some variable costs in there, but overall, if we just look at the total amount of energy used divided by the total cost, we get a charge of 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So we multiply this by 10 cents, and that is going to give us the cost of one charge, which is going to be $9.38. Now, how much does it cost per month? Well, that depends on how much you drive. The average American drives about 1,000 miles per month. I drive far less than that because I just sit in my office and doodle on this whiteboard and never leave the house. But regardless, let's say I were to be a normal human and drive 1,000 miles per month. We know the range of the vehicle is 310. We multiply that by the cost per tank, which is $9.38. And we get a monthly cost of about $30 a month if you're driving 1,000 miles per month. And then if we multiply that out using similar math for a year, it's basically this multiplied by 12, counting for the decimal places that are included within that, we get $363 per year. That's to go 12,000 miles per year in the Tesla Model 3 Performance. Now, I wanted to compare it to a similar vehicle, and we'll get into other scenarios with cheaper cars later on in this video, but the vehicle which I chose to compare it with is the Giulia Quadrifoglio. So the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, they are similar in price, similar in horsepower, similar in weight. Actually, the Giulia is quite heavy, about 3,700 pounds, 3,800 pounds. The Model 3 around 4,000, 4,100 pounds. Similar in size. They're very similar vehicles. In fact, it wasn't my original idea to compare them. I'm an unoriginal human. I just chose to go with it because it happened to be what was on this Motor Trend issue, which was sitting on my desk. So the Giulia versus the Model 3 Performance. Okay, so another interesting point, the Giulia actually has a range, EPA estimated range of 306 miles versus the Tesla Model 3's 310 miles. Interesting that they basically have the exact same range. But regardless, either way, we're looking at the cost for a single tank of the Giulia. And so it has a 15.3 gallon tank. And we'll say premium gas is about $3 per gallon, pretty close to the national average right now for that premium gas. And that is going to give us a fill-up cost of $45.90. significantly more expensive than the Tesla, as you can see. Then we're going to look at the cost per month. So we have the number of miles we're going to drive in a month, 1,000. We divide that by its combined fuel economy rating, which is 20 miles per gallon. We multiply that by 3, pretty simple math here, and we get a 150 for the monthly cost. And then if we were to multiply that by 12, we get $1,800 a year. $1,437 per year more than the Tesla to drive the exact same distance. Now, yes, things will change. So if it's cold outside, the Tesla's not going to do quite as good. But remember, we also do have a little bit of a buffer here with this charging efficiency. And you know, if you're flooring it in the Giulia, you're not going to be getting 20 mpg. If you're flooring it in the Model 3, you're not going to be getting 310 miles of range. So, you know, just playing with averages here, EPA estimates where you're going to be, $1,400 per year cheaper to drive the Tesla Model 3 Performance. Now, if you go with EPA estimates, they actually say the Giulia is going to cost you $2,200 per year and that the Tesla will cost you $550 per year. So they actually say the difference is even greater, $1,650 estimated difference in energy costs between the Tesla Model 3 and the Giulia. Quite significant overall. Now remember, at the beginning of this video I said the reason why electric cars are so much cheaper to drive than gasoline-powered cars is not because gasoline is more expensive than electricity, it's because they're so much more efficient. So let's assume our Giulia would be equally as fuel efficient as the Tesla Model 3 Performance. So instead of a combined rating of 20 miles per gallon, it would have a rating of 116 miles per gallon. So if we take 1,200 and we divide that by 116, we get 103.4 gallons used in a year. We multiply that by 3 and we get about $310 per year. So as you can see, if the Giulia was as fuel efficient, as efficient at moving a box of metal from one spot to another spot, it would actually be cheaper per year than a Tesla Model 3 because gasoline, you know, energy-wise is actually pretty cheap right now. So to move it the same amount of space, if it had better fuel economy, the same fuel economy as the Tesla, it would actually be cheaper on a yearly basis. But because the Model 3 is so much more efficient at moving a box of metal from one spot to another, it's significantly cheaper to drive. So another way of thinking about this is that the EPA says 1 gallon of gasoline is equivalent to 33.7 kilowatt hours. So the Tesla has a 75 kilowatt hour battery pack. We divide that by 33.7 and we get about 2.2, which means the Tesla has about 2.2 gallons of fuel at a full charge. So basically no fuel. The only reason it's able to go so far is because it's crazy efficient. Now, if you're actually paying super close attention, you're like, wait a minute, if I take 116, the Tesla's combined fuel economy rating, and I multiply that by 2.2, that's going to give me something closer to like 260 miles, not the 310 that the EPA says it should be getting. And part of why this is because this does not account for regen. So if you have regen occurring, which every time you slow down your vehicle, the combined fuel economy rating, of course, includes city mileage. If you have combined fuel economy rating here and you have regen occurring, your vehicle is going to use more than 75 kilowatt hours on a full charge. So whatever distance it drives on that full battery charge, it's actually going to use more than 75 kilowatt hours. That's just how much the battery holds, but you'll regain some of that every time you come to a stop. So your actual amount of energy that you have to go whatever distance you're going is dependent on how often you're using regen. So under that cycle, the EPA is going to give you an estimated 310 miles of range. All right, so now let's make a comparison that makes more sense on a national, broader level looking at averages. So we're going to compare the Tesla. Reason why we're continuing to use the Tesla is because the Model 3 Performance, efficiency-wise, kind of sits in the middle of the electric cars out there. There are more efficient cars, there are less efficient cars. 116 mpge isn't all that unreasonable of a combined rating for an electric car. On the flip side, for our gasoline car, we're going to assume a car with a 12-gallon tank and 30 miles per gallon. I chose 30 miles per gallon. The national average is 25 miles per gallon in the United States, but that of course includes trucks, SUVs, which people are going to be buying anyways, but we're just going to give it a little bit of benefit here and say, let's say you get 30 miles per gallon instead of 25. Now, the national average fuel price for regular gas is $2.35. Crazy cheap, and it's probably going to be the thing in this video that dates it so much is the fact that I'm saying gasoline costs $2.35. So it's very cheap at the moment. So to fill up the Tesla with electric national average price of 13 cents per kilowatt hour, $12.20. This will be less if the electric car has a smaller battery pack, like a Nissan Leaf or a BMW i3, things like that. That'll be, you know, about half that. But regardless, filling up a regular car with a 12-gallon tank that gets 30 miles per gallon, filling that car up, $28.20. So even with gas, extremely cheap. Filling the car up is, you know, about double the price, and about double the price monthly, $39 per month versus $78 per month. $472 per year for the electric car with national average electric prices versus $940 with a 30 mile per gallon car per year with, you know, getting gas at $2.35. Now, if you were to use premium gas, national average is currently $2.90. So as you can see, that bumps the price. And if you were to assume gasoline were to get more expensive, which electricity could also get more expensive, but we have had, you know, certainly $4 per gallon gas in the United States in recent history. So if it was at $4 a gallon, look at how significant that change is. So if you were to look at on a yearly basis, $472 versus $1,600. If you were to own that car for 10 years, $11,280 if gas was $4 a gallon. It's not, so perhaps that difference will be somewhere around $5,000 to $7,000 over 10 years. Now, yes, you could come up with all kinds of hypotheticals that could happen to either car, why one might be more expensive than the other over the duration of 10 years. The battery could fail in the electric car, the engine could fail in the internal combustion car. There's plenty of little items that could go wrong on that combustion engine. There's plenty of little things that could go wrong on an electric car. So anything, you know, it's not necessarily which one is going to cost more long term that we're talking about in this video. It's from an energy standpoint, how much does it cost to get it from this spot to another? And electrics are far, far cheaper. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can kind of do it yourself based on what cars you're looking at buying. So if you're looking at buying two different cars, here are the equations all laid out for you in order to determine how much would each of these cars cost per month from an energy standpoint. So for an electric car, you're taking the number of miles that you drive in a month, dividing it by that car's range, multiplying by the battery size, divided by the charging efficiency. In this case, I used 80% just because it's a simple conservative estimate. That means you'll probably be at least close enough to the right answer. And then you multiply that by your electricity cost, so what that costs per kilowatt hour for you. That will give you your monthly cost. To compare it to an internal combustion engine, you take the number of miles you're going to drive in the month, divided by the internal combustion engine's combined fuel economy rating, multiply that by the price of gasoline, and that will give you the cost per month. So, you know, you don't have to use this specific scenario. You can come up with any scenario you like. As you could see, if you were to have a car that had 60 miles per gallon, that would reduce this cost by about half, meaning you would match the electric car. So if you were to buy a gasoline car that had 60 mile per gallon fuel economy and fuel remained at $2.35, then you could get similar price as far as moving that car from one spot to another as an electric car. Now again, that's dependent on energy being cheap, on gasoline being cheap. So a lot of variables here, but you have the tool to play around with it. Curious to know what you guys think about all of this. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.